Hello, dear students. Welcome back. Today we are going to talk about fire and ice. Yes, after dust of snow, we are going to read Robert Frost's second poem, Fire and Ice. But before we read the text and understand it, let's know something more about Robert Frost. Robert Frost was born in San Francisco, America on March 26, 1874. His father, William Prescott Frost Jr., belonged to New England, and his mother, Isabel Moody Frost, was a Scottish immigrant from Edinburgh. His father died in 1885. After his father's death, they had to live a hard life. Later on, Robert Frost became the most popular American poet of 20th century. He died on 29th January 1963 at the age of 88. Let's have a look at some of the famous poems written by Robert Frost. The Road Not Taken, Home Burial, Directive, Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening, Mending Wall, After Apple Picking, and Dust of Snow are some of his famous poems. Now, let's move ahead and read the text and understand what is there in the poem. Some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. From what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I knew enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. Fire and Ice is an extremely compact little lyric. Not a syllable is wasted. The theme of the poem is the age-old question. Now the question is whether this world will end in fire or in ice. Frost raises questions about the fate of the world. He decides that any of the two options would achieve its purpose sufficiently well, because both have potential to bring this world to an end. So that is what the poem is all about. The poet shares the common belief that everything that exists will have its end too. People are divided on this issue. Now why? Because some think that the natural element of fire will cause destruction of this world. But others have different opinion. They believe that ice will be the cause of the end. Because one day this world will surely come to an end. But how? That is the question. Putting in terms of human emotions, the element fire stands for passions, desires, and love. Unbridled passions and desires can cause the end of the world. So when you are not able to control your desires and you can go up to any extent to satisfy your instincts, so definitely this way world can come to an end. Ice represents hate or cold reasoning. It represents dialectical emotion that is opposite to fire. Ice benumbs. So does cold and calculated reasoning. Cold thoughts and reasoning make us insensitive and cruel. And that is also enough to bring this world to an end. The poet has experienced both these emotions. He comes to his own conclusion. It doesn't matter how the world will end. Even hate born out of cold and icy reasons is sufficient to cause destruction and the end of the world. Let's have a look at the short summary of the poem. It is certain that this world will come to an end. The poet shares the belief of the people that everything that exists now will end sooner or later. Something will definitely become the reason. The poet deals with a very sublime subject, the end of the world. And we all have this curiosity to know how this world will come to an end. So there are two different beliefs, and the poet talks about these two different beliefs in this poem regarding the end of this materialistic world. Some say that this world will end in fire. The world will be reduced to a fireball in the end. So this is the scientific aspect. And there are others who think that this world will end in ice, freezing all kinds of life into death and destruction. So seeing this poem in terms of literature and scientifically also. The poet sides with those who believe that this world will end in fire. The poet links these two very powerful elements of nature to human emotions and human behavior. Fire is a symbol of human passions, or you can say uncontrollable desires. Uncontrolled passions of love and desire will be the cause of destruction of this world. Uncontrolled fire and untamed passionate desires will certainly bring an end of this world. The poet confesses that he himself has tasted desire. So, he is quite aware of the potential of unbridled passions and fire of love of causing death and destruction. So fire has enough potential. I mean, when you cannot control your desires, you can go up to any extent to satisfy your instincts. And that is enough to bring this world to an end. No doubt, fire can bring an end of this world. But if this world has to be destroyed twice, then ice can serve that purpose. Ice represents hate. This hate is not the product of an outburst for revenge. On the other hand, it stands for cold and ice reasoning. The poet compares the nature of ice with hatred. The cold response of the people these days. Ice benumbs. Hate born of cold reasoning makes a man insensitive to feelings. Hatred can make our minds numb, not able to think. Cold thoughts make us insensitive and cruel. So the poet thinks that ice or hate can be a strong and great cause for the destruction of this world. So ice or hatred will suffice to bring an end to this world. Robert Frost, in his poem, has clearly talked about two beliefs of people about how the world will end. So one set of people believe that the world would be burnt by the desires of men. The uncontrolled and unending desires have made men greedy, and this has led to jealousy, and it would bring the world to an end. So don't you think that we all need to mend our ways? Otherwise, that day is not far away. Then we all will be perished. However, if the world were to end twice, then the poet feels that the second time the earth would perish due to ice. The ice represents hatred. Man's hatred is very destructive. It's a silent killer. Ice or hate will freeze the hearts and emotions of people, and it has the strength to destroy the world. It's high time we become aware of natural occurrences around us and think about it. Strong emotions like hatred and desire can be the cause of destruction of the entire humanity. Introspect yourself and control your emotions. Accomplishing one's desires, aim, or goal should not be at the cost of others. One must learn to spread love, peace, and brotherhood. So the main theme of Fire and Ice is that human emotions are destructive when allowed to run unbridled. They can destroy a person morally, mentally, and physically. In this poem, Frost points out that humans will be the agents of their own destruction, one way or the other. He seems to compare desire to fire and hate to ice. Both desire and hate are represented by physical forces that could lead to our extinction. We must interpret desire to be something like greed, perhaps for natural resources, oil, fresh water, natural gas, and so on, since nations come into conflict repeatedly over these basic resources. So this way, the message of the poem is quite clear. For the narrator of the poem, presumably in the voice of Robert Frost, it really doesn't matter whether it is fire or ice that will destroy the world. What matters is what is to be done about the heat or the cold. In this sense, this poem is a call to act, to stop arguing about the matter, how the earth will end. In fact, man should be debating about what man can do to stop it. So it's high time to save humanity. If we keep those values alive, then definitely something can be done. Otherwise, destruction would be there and no one would be able to control it. So, if we see the title, the poem is titled Fire and Ice, but it is not about natural disasters. Frost turns fire and ice into symbols of two different sides of human beings, the passionate and the rational. Frost seems to believe that since both have the power to destroy human beings, so the debate posed by the poem, how the world will end, is basically irrelevant. So what is the need of the hour, children? Undoubtedly, it is to figure out what needs to be done to save it. In a sense, the title ironically understates Frost's real concern, which we all need to understand at this point of time, children. So when you read something, try to understand why it has been written. And I hope the message of the poet is clear to everyone. So that was all about the poem Fire and Ice by Robert Frost. I hope you all understood it well. Thank you so much for watching the video. Take good care of yourself. Bye.